The whispers in the wedding hall started before the music. At first, they were soft, almost polite. But within seconds, they spread across the entire ballroom like fire through dry grass. Because the moment the groom walked in, Adaeze felt her heart stop. Standing confidently at the altar, adjusting the cuff of his navy blue agbada, smiling politely at the guest, was her ex-husband, Tunde Alade, the same man she had divorced barely a year earlier. Adaeze's fingers tightened around her clutch purse as confusion rushed through her body. What was he doing here? Why was he the groom? And more importantly, why had her best friend invited her to this wedding? Adaeze didn't yet realize something devastating. The wedding she had come to attend was about to reveal the greatest betrayal of her life. 3 years earlier, Adaeze Alade had lived the kind of life Abuja's social media loved to admire. Her home sat inside the quiet luxury of Maitama, a sleek white duplex with tall glass windows surrounded by carefully trimmed hedges and security gates. Her husband, Tunde Alade, owned one of the fastest-growing infrastructure consulting firms in Abuja. His company worked with government agencies and international development organizations on large construction projects across Nigeria. Adaeze herself was a respected corporate lawyer, specializing in contract negotiation and regulatory law. Together, they were what Abuja called a power couple. Elegant, successful, admired, but admiration from the outside rarely tells the whole truth. Inside their marriage, the distance had slowly begun to grow. Tunde worked constantly. Government contracts demanded endless meetings, travels, and negotiations. Adaeze understood the pressure of ambition. She had her own career to manage. But over time, the silence inside their marriage became heavier. Dinner conversations became shorter. Weekend plans became rare. The house that once felt warm slowly started to feel like two separate lives sharing the same roof. Adaeze told herself it was normal. Many successful couples went through this phase. Still, on lonely evenings when Tunde traveled, Adaeze often found herself calling the one person who always seemed to understand her, Kemi Balogun. Adaeze and Kemi had been inseparable since their university days in Ibadan. Back then, they were two young women sharing a cramped hostel room, surviving on instant noodles and ambition. They studied together, cried together, dreamed together. They had promised each other something simple. No matter where life took them, their friendship would always remain loyal. Years later, Kemi moved to Abuja and started working in event planning and corporate networking. She knew everyone, from politicians' aide to business executives. Her personality was magnetic, warm, supportive, always ready to listen. When Adaeze felt overwhelmed, Kemi was the first person she called. And whenever Adaeze complained about the growing distance in her marriage, Kemi always had something to say. One evening, Adaeze sat with Kemi at a rooftop restaurant in Wuse. The city lights glowed beneath them as Abuja's quiet nightlife moved below. Adaeze sighed heavily. "I feel like I'm married to Tunde's work schedule." Kemi leaned forward sympathetically. "He's still traveling a lot?" Adaeze nodded. "Sometimes I wonder if he even notices I'm there anymore." Kemi stared thoughtfully into her drink. Then she lowered her voice slightly. "Adaeze, can I say something honestly?" Adaeze shrugged tiredly. "Please do." Kemi hesitated. Then she spoke carefully. "Sometimes, when a man becomes that distant, It's because something else has his attention. Adaeze blinked. What do you mean? Kemi sighed quietly. I'm not saying he's cheating, but men who suddenly become unavailable usually have a reason. The idea settled into Adaeze's mind like an unwelcomed seed. After that night, things began to look different. If Tunde answered messages late, Adaeze wondered why. If he cancelled dinner because of work, Adaeze wondered if work had a name. If he smiled while reading his phone, Adaeze wondered who had sent the message. And every time those doubts surfaced, Kemi was there. You deserve attention. You shouldn't feel lonely in your own marriage. Adaeze, successful women don't beg for love. The whispers slowly grew louder, then more direct, then strategic. 6 months later, Adaeze made the decision that shocked everyone in Abuja's social circle. She filed for divorce. The news spread quickly. Friends whispered. Business partners speculated. How could a couple like this suddenly break apart? But Adaeze believed she had made the right decision because Kemi stood firmly behind her. You chose your dignity, Kemi told her repeatedly. You will thank yourself later. Tunde tried to call Adaeze many times during the divorce process, but Adaeze rarely answered. And every time she hesitated, Kemi advised the same thing. Don't let him manipulate you. Eventually, the divorce was finalized. 2 signatures. 2 lives separated. Adaeze walked away from the marriage, determined to rebuild her life. She didn't realize someone else had been planning something far bigger. A year later, Kemi called Adaeze with exciting news. I'm getting married. Adaeze smiled through the phone. That's amazing. Who's the lucky man? Kemi laughed playfully. You'll meet him at the wedding. I want it to be a surprise. Adaeze didn't think much of it. Kemi had always loved dramatic reveals. Please come, Kemi insisted. You're my closest friend in Abuja. It wouldn't feel right without you there. Adaeze agreed immediately. She never imagined that invitation would lead her into the most humiliating moment of her life. The wedding took place in a luxurious event hall in Jabi. Crystal chandeliers shimmered above rows of elegant tables. Abuja's elites had gathered. Politicians, business executives, socialites. As Adaeze walked into the hall wearing a deep emerald gown, she noticed something strange. People were staring. Not casually, intensely. Some whispered behind their hands. Others looked at her with obvious curiosity. Adaeze frowned slightly. Why was everyone looking at her like that? She assumed it was simply because she was close to the bride. But the whispers continued, and the strange tension in the room kept growing. Then the music changed. The ceremony was beginning. The groom walked in first, tall, confident, dressed in a navy blue agbada. And the moment Adaeze saw his face, her entire body froze, because standing at the altar was Tunde Alade, her ex-husband. Shock surged through her chest. Her mind struggled to process what she was seeing. What was he doing here? Was this some coincidence? Was he attending as a guest? But then the pastor welcomed him clearly. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the groom. The groom. Tunde was the groom. Adaeze felt the room spinning slightly, and the whispers around her suddenly became louder. Then the bridal music began. The doors at the back of the hall opened slowly. A woman in a white wedding dress stepped inside. A veil covered her face as she walked gracefully down the aisle. Adaeze watched, her heart pounding violently. And when the bride reached the front, she lifted the veil. The room exploded with gasps. Because the bride was Kemi Balogun, Adaeze's best friend. For a moment, time itself seemed to pause. Kemi smiled calmly as she stood beside Tunde at the altar, like nothing unusual had happened, that she had not spent months encouraging Adaeze to leave the very man she was now marrying. Adaeze felt humiliation burn through her chest. Guests watched her openly now. Phones quietly began recording. Kemi finally glanced toward her. Their eyes met, and Kemi smiled, a small victorious smile, like someone who had finally won a long game. The pastor began speaking, but before he could continue the vows, Tunde raised his hand. "Please stop the ceremony." The hall went silent. Tunde suddenly turned slowly towards the audience, then towards Adaeze. His expression was serious, not proud, not mocking, just heavy. "There is something everyone here deserves to know before this wedding continues." Kemi's smile disappeared instantly. "Tunde, what are you doing?" she whispered sharply. But he continued. "When Adaeze divorced me last year, I believed our marriage had simply fallen apart." He paused. "I believed she no longer trusted me." Adaeze's chest tightened, because that had been true. Then Tunde reached into his agbada pocket and removed a document. "But recently, I discovered something disturbing." The hall leaned forward. "My company hired investigators after some suspicious communications were discovered involving our business contracts." Kemi's face slowly began to pale, and those investigations revealed something shocking. Tunde's voice hardened. "Someone had been deliberately feeding Adaeze false information about me during our marriage." The hall erupted in whispers. Tunde looked directly at Kemi. That person was Kemi Balogun. Kemi shook her head instantly. "This is ridiculous." But Tunde continued. "Phone records, fabricated messages, fake evidence of affairs that never existed." He held up the investigation file. "Kemi manipulated Adaeze into believing I was cheating." Adaeze's hands trembled. Her entire past year suddenly felt like it was collapsing around her. "But why?" she whispered. Tunde answered quietly. "Because of the company." Gasps spread across the room. During the divorce settlement, Tunde explained, Adaeze insisted on walking away from her ownership shares in the company. "You deserve a clean break," Kemi had told her. Now Tunde revealed the truth. Adaeze originally owned 40% of Alade infrastructure. The guest murmured loudly. That share is now worth over 2 billion naira. The realization hit the room like thunder. Kemi's plan had been simple: destroy the marriage, convince Adaeze to abandon her ownership, then marry Tunde and inherit the company. But Tunde lifted another document. There was one mistake in that plan. He turned toward Adaeze. Before the divorce finalized, Tunde's lawyer inserted a legal protection clause. Adaeze frowned slightly, remembering vague paperwork discussions. That clause stated that if the divorce settlement was influenced by external fraud or manipulation, the asset division becomes legally void. The room fell silent. Tunde spoke the final words slowly, which means Adaeze's 40% shares of the company is automatically reinstated. Gasps exploded across the hall. The wedding had just collapsed. Kemi's expression twisted with rage. "You set me up?" Tunde shook his head calmly. "No, you did that yourself." Security quietly entered the hall because the investigation had already been submitted to authorities. Kemi's manipulation wasn't just betrayal, it was fraud. As the security escorted her away, the same whispers she once enjoyed now followed her. Only this time, they were about her downfall. Adaeze stood frozen in the center of the hall. Everything she believed about the past year had just been shattered. Tunde walked slowly toward her. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. Adaeze looked at the empty altar, at the destroyed wedding, at the truth she had been blind to. Then she spoke softly. "I trusted the wrong person." Tunde nodded, so did I. Months later, Adaeze returned to work alongside Tunde at Alade Infrastructure, not as husband and wife, but as partners, rebuilding what deception had nearly destroyed. The betrayal of Kemi Alade had changed her forever, but it also taught her something she would never forget. The most dangerous enemies are not always the ones who oppose you openly. Sometimes they are the ones sitting beside you, whispering advice, while quietly planning to take your place. If you enjoyed this story, share it with somebody. Drop a comment in the comment section and tell us where you're watching from. See you in our next story.